On the morning of July 23, 2003, a Wednesday with clear skies and mild temperatures in Foz do Iguaçu, Paraná, the young couple Marcelo Andrade, 31, and his wife Luciana Pereira, 28, checked into the Hotel Panorama, a mid-sized establishment located about 3 kilometers from the famous Iguaçu Falls. The couple, residents of Curitiba, had planned a 5-day trip to celebrate their 3rd wedding anniversary. According to the hotel's reception record, they arrived at 10:43, smiling and carrying only 2 medium-sized suitcases. Marcelo, a civil engineer employed at a renowned construction company in the capital of Paraná, and Luciana, a biology teacher at a private school, were described by family and friends as a stable and happy couple. They had no children yet, but planned to start a family the following year. This trip to Foz do Iguaçu represented a special moment before taking that important step in their lives. According to hotel records, the couple left the hotel around 14:30 that same day, informing the receptionist that they would visit the falls. Surveillance camera footage from the hotel, later reviewed by the police, confirmed their departure. Marcelo was wearing beige shorts, a light blue t-shirt, and sneakers. Luciana wore a light dress in green tones and sandals. Both carried small backpacks, and Marcelo had a digital camera hanging from his neck, a recent Sony model for the time. The last confirmed record of the couple was at 15:22, when they passed through the entrance gate of Iguaçu National Park. A park employee, later identifying the couple in photographs, vaguely remembered them because of their excitement. It seemed to be their first time at the falls. They were as excited as children, he testified 2 days later. From that point, Marcelo and Luciana simply vanished. They did not return to the hotel that night. Their belongings remained untouched in room 407, the breakfast they had prepared. Avera was not consumed the following morning. Their cell phones, which already had weak signals in the border region in 2003, stopped registering any activity after 16:45 that day. It was only on the evening of July 24th, when the hotel maid noticed that the room remained exactly as it had been left the previous morning, that the hotel manager, Carlos Mendes, decided to contact the civil police. I found it strange. They paid for 5 days and left all their belongings in the room. No one does that if they intend to leave the hotel, Mendes explained to investigators. The first hypothesis raised was that the couple may have crossed the border into Paraguay or Argentina, countries bordering Foz do Iguaçu. Perhaps they had spontaneously decided to extend their trip by visiting Puerto Iguaçu in Argentina or Ciudad del Este in Paraguay, both only a few kilometers from the park. However, checks at border crossings did not reveal any records of the couple. Their passports were found inside the suitcase in the hotel room. None of the couple's credit cards had any activity after their disappearance. Their bank accounts remained untouched. The car they had rented, a silver Fiat Palio, was found 2 days later in the parking lot of Iguaçu National Park, exactly where visitors usually leave their cars to access the trails to the falls. They would never do this. They would never abandon everything without a word, insisted Roberto Andrade, Marcelo's brother, upon arriving in Foz do Iguaçu on July 26th. My brother is extremely responsible. If they decided to change their plans, they would have informed someone. They would have called their parents, me, someone. The first 72 hours were crucial and intense. The civil police of Foz do Iguaçu mobilized a special team. Search efforts were carried out on all the park trails, including dense forest areas near the tourist paths. The fire department searched sections of the Iguaçu River, especially near the waterfalls. Teams with sniffer dogs combed the entire length of the main and secondary trails. The weather conditions following the disappearance did not help the search efforts. A cold front brought moderate and persistent rain to the region between July 25th and 28th, making the work of rescue teams difficult and potentially erasing any traces the couple may have left behind. If you want to follow more cases like this, which shake society and reveal hidden truths, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any investigation. The voice on the recording said, Chief Investigator Ricardo Munhoz, assigned to the case, established 3 initial lines of investigation: an accident at the falls, premeditated crime, or voluntary escape. The statistics were not promising. In 2003, the border region registered concerning numbers of crimes related to tourists, from petty thefts to kidnappings and homicides, often linked to smuggling and drug trafficking that characterized the region. The first significant clue emerged on July 29th when a tourist from Sao Paulo, reviewing her photos from her visit to the falls, identified the couple in the background of one of her images. The photo, taken at 16:17, according to the camera's metadata, showed Marcelo and Lusana on the observation platform near the Devil's Throat, one of the most impressive and dangerous points of the falls. In the image, they were talking to an unidentified man, approximately 40 years old, with gray hair and wearing a shirt that seemed to have a logo from a local tour company. This photo was crucial because it established a specific time and location, explained investigator Munhoz in a press conference. It also introduced a new element. Who was this man, and what was his relationship with the missing couple? Authorities quickly began efforts to identify the man in the photograph. All local tour companies were contacted, employees interviewed, and records checked. After 5 days of intense investigation, it was discovered that he was not an official guide, as no company recognized the uniform or the individual. On August 3rd, Lusana's family offered a reward of 50,000 reais for any information that would lead to the couple's whereabouts. Posters were distributed throughout Foz do Iguaçu, Ciudad del Este, and Puerto Iguaçu. The case gained national coverage, appearing on television programs like Linha Direita from TV Globo and Brazil Urgent from TV Bandeirantes. The hypotheses multiplied. One avenue of the investigation explored the possibility that the couple had been kidnapped by Paraguayan criminals for extortion, a practice that occasionally occurred in the region. However, no ransom was ever demanded. Another investigative line considered the possibility that they had fallen victim to a criminal group, exploiting tourists by taking them on fake tours and then stealing their belongings. But this theory did not explain why their belongings remained untouched in the hotel. In September 2003, an anonymous witness contacted the police, claiming to have seen the couple boarding a private boat on the Argentine side of the falls. This information led to a new phase of searches now concentrated along the small docks and marinas along the Iguaçu River. Federal police diving teams explored sections of the river, while investigators interviewed all registered boat owners in the area. This led, like others, eventually led to no concrete results. The case had peculiar characteristics that made it extremely challenging, explained investigator Munhoz years later, who remained responsible for the investigation even after his transfer to Curitiba in 2005. We didn't have a body. We didn't have a crime scene. We didn't have an apparent motive. Just 2 people who seemed to have evaporated at one of Brazil's most visited tourist spots. The first major twist in the case came in January 2004, when a fisherman found a damaged digital camera on the banks of the Iguaçu River, approximately 2 kilometers downstream from the falls. Despite the water damage, federal police technicians were able to recover part of the memory card. Among the partially recovered images, there was a sequence of photos taken by Marcelo and Lusana at the falls. The last photo was registered at 16:38, nearly 1 hour and 30 minutes after the last official confirmation of their presence in the park. This last photo showed a lesser-known trail away from the main visitor circuit. Park experts identified the location as part of an old maintenance route, officially closed to the public since 2001 due to safety concerns. The image showed Luciana smiling, with an expression that did not indicate any coercion or fear, pointing to a partially visible sign that read, "Entry prohibited, restricted area." This discovery was significant because it indicated that, for some reason, they had left the official tourist circuit, commented investigator Munhoz. But we still didn't know why. Had they been guided by someone? Had they decided to explore on their own, or were they forced to take that path? Another element complicating the investigation was Marcelu's professional background. 3 months before the disappearance, he had testified as a witness in a case against his company for overpricing in public works. Although he wasn't directly accused, his testimony had implicated superiors in corruption schemes. Investigators considered the possibility that the disappearance could be related to some form of retaliation. In 2005, after almost 2 years of investigation without significant progress, the case began to cool down. Active searches were reduced, although the inquiry remained officially open. The families, however, never gave up. Roberto Andrade, Marcelu's brother, founded a non-governmental organization dedicated to missing persons cases, using his brother and sister-in-law's story as a banner to raise awareness of the issue at a national level. Between 2006 and 2016, the case received sporadic media attention, usually around the anniversary of the disappearance. New leads emerged, unconfirmed sightings in distant cities, alternative theories, revelations from supposed witnesses, but none produced concrete results. In 2018, a technological breakthrough brought renewed hope. The federal police, using new image analysis techniques, were able to significantly improve the quality of the photo where the couple appeared, talking with the unidentified man. Facial recognition experts compared the enhanced image with police databases and, after months of analysis, established a preliminary match with Victor Mendonca, 52 years old, a former tour guide with a criminal record for fraud and exploitation of tourists. In March 2019, almost 16 years after the disappearance, the federal police finally located Victor Mendonca in a small town in the interior of Mato Grosso do Sul. When confronted with the photographic evidence, he initially denied knowing the couple, but after hours of interrogation, he admitted to having briefly spoken with Marcelu and Luciana at the falls in July 2003. "I worked on my own, offering unofficial tours to lesser-known spots in the park," confessed Victor. "I charged less than the agencies and took tourists to places not on the usual routes. It was irregular, I know, but it wasn't criminal." According to Victor, he had offered the couple a special tour to view the falls from a privileged angle, accessible only by a restricted trail that he knew well. They accepted the proposal and scheduled a meeting for the late afternoon of that same day, after the park officially closed to the public. "I waited for them at the designated spot until it got dark, but they never showed up," he said. "I thought they had simply canceled. When I heard about the disappearance in the following days, I was scared. I feared being implicated because of my irregular work. So I never came forward to the authorities." Victor's confession, although it did not fully clarify the mystery, provided a new direction for the investigation. If the couple had planned a clandestine meeting after the park closed, it could explain their presence on the restricted trail shown in the last recovered photograph. Detective Helena Campos, who took over the case in 2017, ordered intensive searches in the specific area indicated by Victor Mendonca. "We now had a precise location to concentrate our efforts, instead of searching the entire park," she explained. "And more importantly, we had a new timeline that suggested they could have stayed in the park after it closed." In April 2019, during searches in this specific area, Investigators discovered the remains of a partially buried backpack, which was later identified as similar to the one Lusana had carried in the hotel images. The material was extremely degraded. After so many years exposed to the elements, but it contained fragments of a tourist map of Foz do Iguaçu, with handwritten markings indicating points off the official trails. This discovery reinforced the theory that the couple had indeed planned to explore restricted areas of the park. However, it still didn't explain what had happened to them. The search efforts continued intensively in the region, now with the assistance of more advanced technologies, including drones equipped with thermal cameras and depth sensors. In June 2019, a former employee of the Iguaçu National Park, now retired, contacted the police after watching a news report about the new developments in the case. Antonio Silveira, who had worked as a park ranger between 1990 and 2010, revealed the existence of a network of tunnels and underground passages built in the 1970s during the military dictatorship. They were supposedly created for national security purposes due to the proximity to the border. These tunnels were officially deactivated and sealed in 1995, but some access points remained known to former employees, Silveira stated. One of these access points was located precisely in the restricted area where the couple was last seen with. This new information, specialized teams from the federal police and fire department located one of the entrances mentioned by Silveira, which was partially covered by vegetation and debris. The entrance led to a complex system of tunnels in varying states of preservation, some partially flooded, others obstructed by collapses over the years. After 3 weeks of meticulous exploration of this underground system, investigators did not find direct evidence related to the missing couple. However, they discovered that one of the main tunnels led to an exit in Argentine territory, approximately 7 kilometers from the main tourist spot, in a rarely visited area of dense forest. This revelation opened up a new and surprising possibility. The couple might have entered this tunnel system, either voluntarily or involuntarily, and emerged on foreign soil without passing through official border controls. The investigation then expanded into Argentina with the cooperation of local police. Hotel records, inns, and commercial establishments in Puerto Iguaçu and surrounding areas were reviewed, looking for any trace of the couple in the days following their disappearance. This effort produced a surprising result in September 2019. A small family-run hotel in Puerto Libertad, located about 40 kilometers from Puerto Iguaçu, had a handwritten guest register dated July 24, 2003, the day after the disappearance, with names very similar to the couple's, Marcelo A. and Lucia P. According to the hotel's owner, who still managed the establishment 16 years later. She vaguely remembered a Brazilian couple arriving late at night, looking tired and without luggage, asking for a one-night stay. They paid in cash and left early the next morning, the owner recalled. They mentioned something about needing to get to Buenos Aires as soon as possible. They seemed nervous, but I didn't suspect anything wrong at the time. This information led to a new theory. Had the couple voluntarily fled using the tunnels to cross the border without leaving a trace? But if that were the case, why had they never contacted their families again? Why had they abandoned their belongings, documents, and vehicle? And, more importantly, where did they go afterward? The answer to these questions began to emerge in January 2020, when a series of heavy storms hit the Foz do Iguaçu region, causing flooding, landslides, and various structural damages. Among the affected properties was the old Solaris Hotel, a facility that had closed its doors in 2012 and remained abandoned since then, located about 2 kilometers from the national park. During structural assessment work on the building damaged by the rains, civil defense engineers discovered an opening in the basement floor, previously hidden under the flooring. The cavity turned out to be the entrance to another tunnel, part of the same underground system mentioned by former park ranger Antonio Silveira. It was evident that this tunnel had been used long after the official deactivation of the system, explained engineer Cristina Roca, who was in charge of the evaluation. We found evidence of recent human passage, such as food wrappers with manufacturing dates after 2000. Intrigued by this discovery, the engineers notified the authorities. Detective Helena Campos, upon learning about this new access to the tunnel system, immediately connected the information to the case of the missing couple, particularly considering the geographical proximity to the national park. On February 28, 2020, during a detailed inspection of the newly discovered tunnel, teams from the Federal Police and Fire Department located a partially flooded side chamber, where they made a macabre discovery. 2 human skeletons side by side, in an advanced state of decomposition. The remains were carefully removed and sent to the Legal Medical Institute for identification. Alongside the bodies, fragments of fabric compatible with the clothes Marcelo and Luciana had been wearing on the day of their disappearance were found, along with a men's wristwatch with the initials MA engraved on the back, a gift Luciana had given Marcelo on their first wedding anniversary. According to family information, DNA tests comparing samples from the remains with genetic material provided by the relatives confirmed in April 2020 what many had already suspected. The skeletons belonged to Marcelo Andrade and Luciana Pereira, who had been missing for almost 17 years. The examination of the remains revealed disturbing details. Both showed fractures in the skull, suggestive of blunt force trauma. The position of the bodies and forensic evidence indicated that they had been killed elsewhere and later transported to this subterranean chamber, likely with the intention of permanently concealing the bodies. Based on the new evidence, Detective Helena Campos reconstructed the events of that fateful July day in 2003. Our conclusion is that Marcelo and Luciana were approached in the national park, possibly by Victor Mendonca or his accomplices, under the pretext of a special tour. They were led to the restricted area, where they were attacked and killed, most likely due to a robbery gone wrong, or for some other reason still under investigation. The bodies were transported through the tunnel system to the Solaris Hotel, which was still operating at the time, but the owner possibly had knowledge of and access to the underground system. Victor Mendonca, the primary suspect, was located again and subjected to intense interrogation. Confronted with the new evidence, he finally partially confessed his involvement. "I didn't kill anyone," he insisted. "I just took them to the trail. By the time I reached the meeting point, they were with another man, someone I knew only by sight. He dismissed me, saying he would take over from there. I was suspicious, but I didn't want to cause any trouble. I only learned about the disappearance days later. This other man was identified by Victor as Paulo Ribeiro, a former employee of the Solaris Hotel and known in the region for involvement in petty crimes. Investigations revealed that Paulo had worked as a security guard at the hotel between 2001 and 2004, the period that coincided with the couple's disappearance. Curiously, he had abruptly left Foz do Iguaçu in August 2003, just a few weeks after the incident. After months of searching, Paulo Ribeiro was located in Manaus, Amazonas, where he had been living under a false name. Detained in June 2020, he initially denied any involvement in the crime. However, confronted with forensic evidence and Victor's testimony, he eventually confessed to the double homicide. According to his confession, Paulo had been hired by the then manager of the Solaris Hotel, Joaquim Ferreira, who passed away in 2015, to handle a problem with a couple of tourists who had supposedly discovered illegal operations involving the hotel. These operations, as was later uncovered, included money laundering and smuggling, using the tunnel system as a route to transport illegal goods across the border. Joaquin told me they were spies, that they had photographed the tunnel entrance and were going to report everything. Paulo stated in his testimony. He ordered me to intercept them during the tour with Victor, who also worked for us. Occasionally, I didn't intend to kill them initially, just to scare them and take the camera. But the man resisted. There was a struggle, and I ended up hitting both of them with a rock. It was an accident that got out of control. This confession finally clarified the fate of Marcelo and Luciana, victims of tragic and completely random circumstances. Apparently, during their visit to the falls, they had accidentally photographed something they shouldn't have, possibly one of the tunnel entrances or some suspicious activity related to the hotel's illegal operations. Paulo Ribeiro was formally charged with double homicide and corpse concealment and was sentenced to 48 years in prison in January 2021. Victor Mendonça, for his indirect involvement and failure to offer assistance, received an 8-year sentence. For the families of Marcelo and Luciana, the resolution of the case brought a mix of relief and renewed pain. We can finally give them a proper funeral and say goodbye as they deserved, said Roberto Andrade, Marcelo's brother, during the burial held in Curitiba in May 2020. The pain will never completely go away, but at least now we know what happened, and those responsible are paying for their crimes. The case led to important changes in the safety protocols of Iguaçu National Park, including stricter monitoring of restricted areas, more frequent checks on visitors, and the implementation of an advanced tracking system for tourists who opt for more isolated trails. The story of Marcelo and Luciana, so tragically interrupted on that July day in 2003, serves as a grim reminder of the hidden dangers that may exist even in the most popular tourist destinations and the importance of efficient missing persons search and investigation systems. The tunnel complex was fully mapped and permanently sealed after the completion of the investigation, closing a dark chapter in the history of Foz do Iguaçu. The old Solaris Hotel was demolished in 2022, and a memorial was built at the site, dedicated not only to Marcelo and Luciana, but to all victims of unsolved crimes in the region. The NGO founded by Roberto Andrade remains active, having helped clarify dozens of other disappearance cases across Brazil. Every person we find, whether alive or not, represents a family that can finally close a cycle of uncertainty and anguish, he says. This is the best way to honor the memory of Marcelo and Luciana. If you watched until here, it's because you care about these cases that mark families forever. Leave a comment saying, "I watched until here so I can get to know you and see who truly cares about the search for truth." Don't forget to like this video and share it with friends and family. As the more people who know these stories, the greater the chance that other cases will be solved through public awareness. Subscribe to the channel to follow more cases like this, where the search for the truth, even after so many years, finally brings some form of justice and closure to families who have lived in the limbo of uncertainty for so long. Thank you.